Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. As you know, every week I like to say how I know my guest or how I was introduced to my guest because I do think it's important that we are curious, that we're open to meeting new people, to being connected. Whether you're out at an event for your children or you're at just a function or a card exchange or whatever it is, you might meet someone and maybe not be interested in what they do exactly or their profession, or say, oh, I don't need this type. I don't need a financial advisor right now. Keep people's business cards, be curious, want to learn about things because we all have something to share. So, my guest this week, this is a case very similar to some of my previous guests where I've never met them before, but this is virtual. This was a connection made through someone named Marty Wolf, who is a business coach. He's a lot of things. He's an entrepreneur, he's a business coach, he has his own podcast. He is a wonderful gentleman here in northeastern Pennsylvania who I met probably through NEPA networkers, but his reputation preceded him. And I took an intentional networking course with him and Bob Courtwright. And we talked, and he's just a really nice gentleman who offers to help. Says, hey, pick my brain, or what information can I share with you? We had coffee recently, and he said, you know what? I have a couple women's names I want to give you. I think they would be a great fit for your podcast because they're amazing women. And so that leads me to my guest this week, who is Kim Meckwood. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. You know what, and Marty, so I don't know how you know Marty, but you're originally, I should say to the listeners, you're not in northeastern Pennsylvania right now, but you are from Northeast PA. So I know that Marty did know you.
Absolutely. I'm actually here right now, surprisingly, but I know Marty because my dad was Marty's basketball coach, and he helped me a lot through the years with my business. He's an amazing coach, and I'm usually in Los Angeles. So I'm back here for a little bit. I still have a place out there, but I'm going to be home for a little while to check in with family.
Oh, that's great. I know he did mention California, so it's funny when we were arranging the times. I'm like, "Oh, does she know it's Eastern Standard Time?" And then I'm like, "Well, maybe she's not in California. I'm not sure." But that's great. So you're home for the holidays too, which is nice, right? Since they're right around the
Absolutely.
corner. Yeah.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit. I want to get into, so Kim is another one of these fascinating, I think it's fascinating entrepreneurs who you've been on Shark Tank, you have a product that's great, and I know a lot of people will be interested in it. Before we dive into that though, could you just tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and then we'll get into the how you started this journey.
Sure. So I actually started at the University of Scranton and transferred out. I ended up at San Diego State. I was in San Diego for 8 years, then off to Los Angeles for another 23. And my career was I worked in pharmaceutical sales and medical device sales. I had a breakup with a boyfriend, and I had to bring in my own groceries. So that's where Click and Carry came into being. It was one of those things meant out of necessity. So I always lived in a condo, and I have a condo out there. So I have to go through multiple doors, up an elevator, sometimes the stairs, just to get to the front door. So I knew there had to be a better way. And so I invented Click and Carry. My friend and my customer, she's a movement disorder specialist at USC. She was sick of me talking about my invention and sketching it out. So she said, shut up and stop talking about it and do something about it. So I did. And that's when, after eight or nine iterations, Click and Carry was born.
So I should probably pause because I didn't know we are going to jump right into Click and Carry so quickly. I wanted to learn a little bit about you, but so we know you're from Northeast PA. You were in pharmaceutical sales. So I should say to listeners, just so you know, Click and Carry is something that Kim created, and she was on Shark Tank for. And I want to ask about that in a minute or two. But so it's this really cool device so that we know. I don't know if you're like me, but I often will have like 6 bags in one hand, 6 in the other, and it can get really heavy. So this device allows you to literally click the bags, right? And it can hold up to, I believe, 100 pounds. You could distribute
That's
50 on each side so that you can handle your groceries more easily. But let me ask you though, I want to back up just a little bit. So this is a really neat thing, and I'm sure it's really valued by a lot of people. What led you? I would think you mentioned medical devices too. You worked in. Was it from seeing and being connected with those folks that you like with devices that made you be like inventive and innovative with this? I mean, clearly the problem we understand, everybody who's ever gone grocery shopping can relate to that. But what led you to like, oh, I can create something. I have a solution for this.
Well, I've always been very creative and entrepreneurial, but most inventors are actually neurosurgeons. So I worked closely with many neurosurgeons. In particular, there are two who are my favorites. There was Dr. Leiker at USC, who was also an aerospace engineer, and then Igor Feynman, and he's at Huntington Hospital. He's also a biomechanical engineer, and most devices are invented by surgeons. So it was just kind of a natural progression. And Jennifer, as I mentioned earlier, the movement disorder specialist, which means she's a neurologist who specializes in things like Parkinson's, essential tremor, dystonia. She said, shut up and stop talking about it, do something about it. And it just so happened that at the time her upstairs neighbor was getting her master's in product design at the Pasadena Design School. So I was able to hire Audrey and work with her on a 3D CAD print. And that's where I made my 9 iterations before I found the winner.
Wow. So I want to pause there and just say there's an example too of you never know the person you're talking to, you're sharing what's on your mind, and she's like giving you the kind of tough love, like just get going with it. But thankfully, then there was this connection with the designer. So again, I'm a big fan of, I probably talk too much, but sometimes when you share, someone might be like, hey, I can help you with that. And I think that's great. We never know who's going to be able to, and vice versa. But I think that's wonderful.
I agree. In fact, everything kind of fell into place. At the time, my neighbor Stuart across the hall, he worked for Tide, the Beanie Baby company. So he set me up with my mold maker in China. That was my first mold maker. I've since gone on to a different factory, but that was just a natural progression that just by talking about my passion and what I was looking forward to doing. And then um, another friend introduced me to my patent attorney. So it all kind of fell into place.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works out, isn't it?
It
And
really
isn't it like
is.
that's the best way too, though, to find people, right? Because a lot of times if you're doing, I mean, granted, it's longer, more time consuming to do your own research, which I get is sometimes we have to do that. But sometimes you're not sure. You're like, okay, I don't know about this person. I have no idea what their history is. Like when you're being referred to someone or connected, there's at least a little bit of sense of they know this person.
Absolutely. There's definitely a larger area of credibility or a larger sense of credibility with that person.
Yeah, definitely. So you now let me ask you when you were working on this, so 9 iterations, because let's face it, I don't know anybody who goes out there and boom out of the park, you're getting the first one. Things you've got to tweak things, right? You got to test them out. Were you still working your day job, so to speak, while you were obviously I would think while you were working on this?
I was. This was just a part-time gig. And it's funny because the idea for Click and Carry came to me in a dream. I'll quickly show you what the shape is. This is actually the Click and Carry.
Okay,
And
and for folks, this is your reason to go to YouTube.
it's actually, and the best part is when you wear it over your shoulder, your hands free, and your back is such a good support system, it actually feels like half the weight. But like I said, when I had a dream about this, that was the shape of the Click and Carry. And it was fine. It worked perfectly. But the problem is when you set it down, the bags would pop out. So my next iteration was with a magnet. And what happened, the problem with that is the fact that people would lose one of two pieces, or God forbid, a little kid could get hurt. So eventually it became patterned after a spring loaded barrette. So it actually looks a little bit like a boomerang. And now you're able to twist it open. It forms an X, which allows you to evenly distribute the weight on each side and each of the two cavities. And then once you have all of your bag handles in place, you twist the top back, lock them in, and then you could either carry it in your hand or you could wear it over your shoulder and your hands free. And the funny thing is, I invented it for groceries, but people use it as a ski boot tote for dry cleaning, paint cans, construction pails, sports equipment. And then, believe it or not, once you get it home, it's actually a stand for your phone or iPad. So you could use it all around the house.
Ooh, you gotta love a multi-purpose product, right?
Yep.
I
But
have
to be
to go
honest,
ahead.
I didn't think of all of these uses. It's just through social media, people showed me these creative, fun, inventive ways that they use the product.
And that's smart on your part in paying attention to your consumers and what they're doing with it and their experience. That was one of my thoughts. I was going to ask you about the feedback that you've gotten, and clearly, even feedback like that is great because now you know, hey, you know what you can also use it for.
Absolutely. In fact, it's funny you would say that because when I first started on QVC, I would receive feedback that it was a little bit difficult to open. And it was. That was from my first factory. So I listened to their feedback because the truth is, I want to have a really high quality product so I could sleep well at night. And I happened to mention it to another friend, and this other friend, he invented something called the perfect push-up. He introduced me to his factory where 10 million perfect push-ups were made with very little error. So I ended up going over to the new factory. Their engineers worked with the master mold maker here in the United States. At the time, my master mold maker friend, his name was Steve, he was about 86 at the time. It came out perfectly. And now I know that when people receive a click and carry, it's going to be quality product and it's going to open consistently. It's not going to be too hard to open or too easy to open. It's just right. But it took that feedback to be able to make that modification.
And that's smart. I mean, I think anyone who is aware in business, you have to listen because a lot of sometimes you figure you don't want criticisms or critiques or whatever, but I mean, honestly, you have to listen to your end user to know how your product's going and what you need to do to tweak it. Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have to ask you though, it's funny. I had on and we talked about this a little bit offline. I think it's been over a year. Shira Bernard, who she and her brother Michael had come up with the cover for drinks to prevent from spiking, drink spiking. And I had her on, and it's funny because she talked too about how she had this kind of come to her in a dream. I'm thinking, what? All these people are. I have to start getting busy. I've got lazy dreams. You guys are all are you inventing products while you're sleeping? That is just so weird that you both had that. But is that something like had it been on your mind and it kind of seeped into your subconscious or?
I really think that is the case because I knew that I needed something to help me to bring all those groceries in. And I didn't want to make multiple trips. No one wants to make two trips. They want to bring it all in one trip. And in addition, I wanted something for safety. And it's interesting because let's say, for example, let's say an older person, one of my favorite testimonials of all times is from an 81-year-old guy. He said, I love this because I live on the third floor of a walk up. So I'm able to wear my groceries over my shoulder and have a free hand to hold the banister. And then another one of my favorite testimonials was this girl in Los Angeles who said that she lived in an apartment complex, but her parking space was way across the complex. So at night, she liked to wear it over her shoulders so that she had free hands just for safety. So it's very interesting. But yes, it was on my mind. I knew what I wanted, and then it just magically appeared. And I didn't do much with it right away. But then, like I said, after drawing it and talking about it all the time, finally I had that wake up call to go forward and do something with it.
And how long, like, would you say the process was from the time that you actually started and then you had it to where you were in the market?
Oh, it was a long time. I would say it took me about 6 months to find the right iteration. And then I made a mold to see if it was viable. So I knew I was going to waste like $5,000 if the product was not viable. Turns out it was. I did need some modifications for my mold. But then once I had the winner, that's when I had filed for my first utility patent. And that took almost 3 years. The second one took about 2.5 years. So I didn't really do anything with it for about 3 years after the initial product was viable before I was able to sell it.
How do you stay patient in that process?
Life is so busy, as you know. I was just so busy with work, but I was planning. I didn't waste those 3 years, and it was really hard because I love talking to people. So it was hard to keep that secret, completely secret. In fact, I'm sure I let it out of the bag quite a bit. But people are not. A lot of people can't imagine things in their head. So I was safe in that regard. But yeah, it was. I took those 3 years and I really prepared to launch and things were a lot of hurry up and waiting scenarios.
Yeah. Now you might, much like Shira that I had on, she was on Shark Tank with her brother, and I know that you were on Shark Tank as well. Tell me about time frame wise, like what year you were on, and share a little bit if you would, because people love watching that and hearing those kind of stories. What your experience was like.
Sure. So the funny thing is, I auditioned for season two and I was selected to work with the producer. So I worked with the producer for about 3 months. So every week we would meet and go over my pitch. And he had an assistant. And then I ended up at the 11th hour not making it to air. So he said, don't worry, you don't have to apply next year. You'll just be grandfathered in. So fast forward, I'm waiting for my call. I'm waiting for my call. I finally call them. The auditions were closed. My producer went on to a different career. He ended up going into real estate. So fast forward, I tried out about another 6 or 7 times. In fact, I hold the record for the most attempts ever to get on the show. And
Really?
finally, I am selected to be on the show. And the irony is, my producer asked me if I recognized him, and I said, "Yeah, you look familiar, probably from around town. I live in this area called Brentwood. It's right by UCLA and Santa Monica." So I just assumed I knew him from the neighborhood. And the irony is that he was actually the assistant producer when I first attempted to get on the show and was working with the producer for 3 months. So it worked out. His name was Sean. He was amazing. He was a fantastic producer. And it's funny too, because today I was watching Mark and Kelly with my sister and my mom. And there was a unicyclist on, and one of Sean's big ideas was to bring on a unicyclist who was wearing two click and carries on her shoulders and juggling while riding a unicycle. So basically, a part of the pitch was to say, and juggle all that life has to throw your way. So it was a really great tie in. So that's thanks to Sean.
So they actually do help you with that. You're not, because it's interesting. You watch and you wonder, or I wonder, because I've watched it many times, like who has, I just assumed it was the person coming on has to come up with that. But again, they want it to be good television, obviously. So they
Yes.
want it to be interesting to watch. So they help you with all that, which is a great idea with the unicycle. That sounds like it's a great visual.
It was a lot of fun. It's funny too, because when he made the suggestion, it sounded like a fantastic idea until I found out that I had to find the unicyclist. But as luck would have it, there were two master unicyclists in Los Angeles, so it was actually an easy task. And it did. It made for good television. It was a lot of fun, but that is the only rehearsed part of the show. The rest is all up to the entrepreneur. And what I did is I studied a million questions that were asked previously of other entrepreneurs, made sure I had the answers in place so that when I was asked those questions by the sharks, I had a great answer, a great response.
So what year were you on, and who were the judges, I guess, if I'll use that word judge?
I filmed in 2019, but I didn't air until 2020. And my sharks were Mark, Barbara, Mr. Wonderful, Lori, and Robert.
And so I'm this to me sounds like a Lori product. Was it Lori that you made the deal with though? I don't know.
Well, that's an interesting question. So I was already on QVC, so I didn't think I needed Lori, and I wasn't as nice to Lori as I should have been. And it's fun because the editing made it seem as if Lori went out right away, but she didn't. She and Barbara were kind of fighting for me until the end, and then she finally goes out, and then Mark and Barbara made me a deal. It didn't go through. I still will email with Mark or ask questions occasionally, and I should reach out to Barbara again. She has a great team, but I'm still the 100% owner. But the truth be told, I probably should have made a deal with Lori, and she definitely wanted it, but I just didn't think I needed her because of QVC. And it turns out that the only two sharks that can air clips from Shark Tank on QVC are Lori and Mr. Wonderful. So it would have been a good move on my part if Lori were my partner.
Oh wow. So the Mark and Barbara, did you take the deal and it just never panned out, or did you not accept it?
I did accept it. I accepted it. It was kind of a lousy deal on TV, but it's Mark and Barbara. So I went for it. And what I think happened, I don't know for sure. I actually didn't air the year I filmed. I ended up airing because of COVID, because they were afraid that they may not be able to film. So ABC and Sony bought my episode. So I did air about a year and a half later. So I'm not sure if that's the reason why or if they changed their mind. But my guess would be they weren't getting that free, amazing Shark Tank commercial. And as luck would have it, I ended up being on a year later, and it worked out so well. In fact, the executive producer called me personally to tell me I didn't make it to air, probably because he knew how many times I had tried out, and he probably felt sorry for me. And he's such a nice guy. His name is Clay Newbell. I love him. And I was devastated. But then fast forward a couple of months, he called me again. And I didn't answer the call because it was from Cambria, which is not Los Angeles. Cambria is Central Coast, where a lot of great wine is from, since you're the crazy
Mm.
wine girl. Um, and he left a message, and I could tell he was smiling, well, just from his voice. So I called him right back, and he said, Kim, do you remember when I asked you, or do you remember when you asked if an archived episode ever makes it to air? I said, I sure do. And he said, what did I say? I said, you said, I never say never, but it's never happened before. He said, until you. So congratulations, your episode was purchased. And you'll notice I'm on season 12, episode 8. And we're the only 4 in the whole season that are not social distancing.
Oh wow. Okay. Oh, that makes sense because you were recorded before that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So since the deal didn't actually like you didn't happen, but I'm sure the fact that you were on is the huge part, right? Because then people, of course, go searching for your product.
Absolutely. In fact, again, to thank Clay Newbill, he put me on December 11th of 2020. And it was right before the holidays, because this is a great stocking stuffer. So it was great for Hanukkah, for Christmas, for Kwanzaa. I ended up selling about $300,000 worth in the weekend. And
Oh
it was,
wow.
at the time, it was only $9.99. So that's an awful lot of click and carry sold in one weekend. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Now you had said though before Shark Tank, you actually were already on QVC. Did
Right.
you
Mhm.
make that deal yourself, or did you like? Because that's a pretty big deal.
Thank you. Yes, I did. I met QVC when I was at a trade show. It's the Home and Houseware Show in Chicago. And as a part of participating in Inventors Corner, they allow you to pitch on a panel. So there were a bunch of different companies there. And unbeknownst to me, QVC liked me and they liked the product. So they went to Bethany Frankel. Bethany Frankel was a real wife, a
I
housewife of
know.
New York.
Yep. Skinny Margarita, I think. Yep.
Yes, yes. And at the time, she had a talk show, and her show was ending. And each week, she would do a segment called Bethany in Your Business. Well, unbeknownst to me, she selected me for her final Bethany in Your Business. So I thought I would get like a $5,000 or $10,000 stipend and the publicity. But instead, I ended up with a contract with QVC. David Venable came on and presented me with a contract. So it was quite amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really great. So clearly people responded well to they knew you had something that was needed and it just had not been out there. What would you say has been some of the highlights? I mean, these I'm sure you go along and you've got milestones and you've got little successes and you've got obviously bigger successes. But what would you say are some of your brightest spots?
I would say the first bright spot was being awarded 2 utility patents. That was a big deal for me because only 13% of patent holders are women, which is crazy. And
Yes.
I was able to meet the the director of the Patent and Trademark Office a couple of years ago with 2 other female inventors. And the director at the time was Kathy Vidal, who was the second director ever at the Patent and Trademark Office. So that was a big deal for me that the 4 of us, all women, were here represented at the Patent and Trademark Office. That was a big deal to me. Um, Shark Tank has been amazing. It's amazing not just for the credibility that you receive and which enabled me to get into a bunch of retailers. I'm actually in some big retailers now, but I'm going into 3 more big ones, that being Lowe's,
Oh.
Walmart, and Kroger. And I'm currently in Albertsons Safeway, and here on the East Coast, it's Acme in Philadelphia. And I'm in Meyer, which is in the Midwest, and I'm in all of the Tractor Supplies across the country. So it's been fantastic. And I believe it's because of the credibility of Shark Tank. Plus, there are so many other peers that I've met who have also been on Shark Tank, and we have best practice sessions every Tuesday, actually, with a certain small group. I meet with about 12 other entrepreneurs, but then there's a huge group. We're all pals on Facebook. So let's say I have a question about UPC codes at Walmart. I could put out a request and then I'll get an answer from someone who has experienced this and can help me to move forward quickly. It's been just a blessing in disguise.
Wow. I love what you're saying there because I mean, we hear that, or at least I should say, if you're open to it, because I hear it a lot with different women that I collaborate with. That's the kind of thing you need, that kind of community and support, and not like fighting or like, oh, trying to compete. And again, I'm sure that people maybe with very similar products might not be as whatever generous with information, but it's so important when you do have that kind of support and network and bounce ideas off, because what you're struggling with this week could have been someone's headache 2 months ago, but now they can help ease things for you. I think that's great.
Absolutely. It's been phenomenal. In fact, we talked about Shira, and in the summer, I worked with Michael very closely because we had some problems with imposters. So we learned so much about the legal situation in the United States. So we worked with CBP, Customs and Border Protection, but Customs and Border Patrol, excuse me, because they could stop fakes from coming into the country. We worked with stopfakes.com. We worked with the IP division at the White House during the Biden administration. And then because of my Shark Tank group, another fellow Shark Tanker, her name is Beth Beneke with Busy Baby. She introduced me to some people in Washington, D.C. And I actually went down to speak on the Senate floor with Senator Markey of Massachusetts about tariffs, because tariffs have been a real burden for us. And tariffs, it would be fine if we had some time to prepare and to bring manufacturing to the United States, but that wasn't the case. And a lot of small businesses have been really put in a bad situation thanks to these tariffs. And I'm so hoping that the Supreme Court shuts them down. Now, I am now currently producing in both China and in the United States, but we can't be expected to bring manufacturing over immediately. It doesn't work that way. In fact, all of the master mold makers are in China. So that alone would take about 8 months to make the modifications necessary to have the right mold. And what really made me angry is the fact that a company like Apple, which as you know, I just bought a brand new phone today. Uh, Actually, yesterday it was delivered today and hooked up. Apple was given a pass. Now, that's one of the only companies that actually has the money to be able to manufacture in the United States and to do so quickly. So that's just an unfair thing that a small to medium-sized businesses don't have the luxury that a company like Apple has. And lo and behold, they're given a pass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, it's interesting. I asked you the highlights and I was gonna ask you the challenges, and you naturally flowed into them, but I want to follow up on them. But to your most recent part about the tariffs, like you're saying, that is, and it is unfortunate in the, whether we say the, here or in the world we live in, where it seems to be the biggest folks who can handle the troubles are often also given an exit, an easy path. And it's like, well, that doesn't seem fair.
No, it isn't. And it's maddening, but
Yeah.
that's the world.
So right now you're managing, but you've adapted, but clearly it's not something that you wanted, and it has hurt a little bit, if what I'm hearing is right. Yeah.
It sure has. In fact, I was really cash strapped this whole entire year because I knew that there was a good possibility that the tariffs were coming. So I needed to make another huge purchase at the end of December last year in time. So I had the product in the United States before the tariff was implemented.
Yeah. To your point though, and I think this is a lot of people, what some people may not understand who, and believe me, I'm not someone who's real smart on this, but tariffs are not good, in many cases, and they do hurt the consumer and the businesses, and sometimes people don't fully understand that. But time, like you're saying, is so important. Things like the idea in the general concept, yeah, let's get rebuilding or making more in America. It's a great thought, but when the infrastructure is not in place, when you don't have the employees, when you don't have all this stuff, it certainly is a slow burn or a gradual thing that you need to plan and prepare for.
Absolutely. I mean, it would have been fine if we were given a year running ramp space, a year, maybe two, or even subsidies. I can't be expected to be able to quickly manufacture in the United States overnight. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And I want to follow up on your other thing because you had mentioned when we were talking through email about some of the imposters, or I was thinking of the term knockoffs. And I think you were commiserating with Michael because they've had some with their drink cover nightcap. So I'm sure because clearly once something's out there, people are gonna, come up with a knockoff. How do you like you mentioned the border patrol, but how big of an issue has that been overall, and what are some other ways that you're combating that? Or is it a matter too of saying, you're the original, like really making sure people understand and know your name, your brand name?
Yeah, I certainly promote that it's the original, but some of these imposters are shameless and they'll even take my image and my videos and utilize them on their product. And in many cases, the imposter is subpar. So that is a direct reflection on my reputation, which is very important to me. As a result, I really made a determined effort to pivot into retail. And my one of my main advisors said, "Kim, you're going too fast into retail." But it's funny because it seems like when one domino falls, you almost progress, and they all seem to fall in place. For example, I mentioned that I'm in Albertson Safeway, I'm in Tractor Supply, I'm in Meyer. I was in Ralph's and in Southern California, which is a division of Kroger, but now I'm going into Kroger, and they have up like 3,000 stores nationwide. I'm going into 600 Lowe's stores in the urban areas. And I'm going into Walmart. And the thing with Walmart is that they want a United States product. So that this one good thing about the tariff situation is it made me hurry up and make accommodations in the United States. So now I could go into Walmart. It's still not going to be until Q2 because I'm going to be at the front end by the reusable bags, but they're building out the front end space in all of the Walmarts across the country, and they haven't decided on their planogram yet. So hopefully by Q2 you'll see click and carries in all the Walmarts.
Well, that's exciting though. That's really exciting. Um, I know this might sound like a silly question, but it's like, who are these imposters? Like, you know what I mean? Because you picture like the dark alley. Like, is it like it can't just be, is it another entrepreneur or is it a country? Like, or not a country, I didn't mean to say a country, like a company that just does a bunch of knockoffs. You know what I mean? Like, because think about that's really underhanded.
It's terrible, and it's unfortunately it's the Chinese culture. They don't have the same respect for intellectual property that others do, and they reverse engineer. And like I said, in many cases it's really shoddy, but they're ruthless, but they're just trying to make money, and they don't have the same clarity that we would have. I would never steal someone else's idea. It's just not right. And I think karma will find you every day of the week, and they'll eventually be found. And thank goodness I have 2 utility patents, because that means I have another 8 and 9 years on my patents, which are 20-year patents, to be able to sell into the retailers. And the plan from there is to expand into other products. I already have another one in the works, but to get to be the first into the retailers where the others can't sell into the United States, if they tried, I could sue them for infringement.
Okay. That was going to be my next question. Can you sue? But I guess
Mhm.
so they're selling what they're selling like online. They're not getting the deals you're getting because you're credible and theirs is not. Okay. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to bring it into the United States.
Okay. I gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah, there should be some protections for crying out loud, especially since you have those patents.
Absolutely. And another thing about the tariffs is there's something called the de minimis clause. And I don't know if Michael or Shira mentioned it on their call, But the de minimis clauses, if something's under $800, it would come in without tariffs. So there were cases where these imposters would come in for $3, whereas I can't even send a product from Pennsylvania to California for under $5.50 from the United States Postal Service, because my product is only 3.5 ounces per piece.
Mm.
So it was just maddening, but now that's on the kibosh. So that's good.
Yeah, that's good. What would you say? Now, those are business challenge, highlights and challenges. What would you say are some like personal for you, like self-fulfillment or that you have felt over this journey?
I would say my favorite thing to do is working in pajamas, because I love that I don't have to go and visit offices anymore, and I could do my job from anywhere. All I need now is a computer, and I could do my job from anywhere, anytime. Um, I have a local warehouse that I work with. I am so thankful to DPS Nutrition and Doug Petnato, who lets me house my product at his warehouse. I love the guys that work for him. In particular, this one gentleman named Mike Paolucci, who is so smart and handles all of my inventory and all of my big sales. So, for example, a couple weeks ago on the 16th of October, I was on the Mark and Kelly show for a blast sale. And we had over, I believe it was 2,200 orders that we had to get out in 3 days. So they have been wonderful. So it's lovely to be able to work closely with them and to be in the same city. That's such a blessing. Plus, it's a lot less expensive here than housing my product in Los Angeles. So I'm saving a lot of money. And plus, I have the family labor for when I need them. My mom's really good at repackaging for me and doing the hang cards. So that's been great. And I just I love working from home. I do miss my big salary that I used to have and the security, knowing that there will always be money coming in because I'm employed, and having weekends off or nights off and free. I don't have that luxury anymore, but I'm working to my own benefit, and this could potentially really pay off one day. I hope it
Yeah.
does. No, it
Yeah.
will. It
I
will.
was just gonna say it will put it out there, right? Manifest it.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me ask you, this isn't so much, and this hopefully you won't mind this question, but so you were in pharmaceutical sales and then devices. Is there anything about that you, I mean, I know you mentioned what you do miss that you don't miss because it's I don't know, there's some thoughts about like, our culture is so reliant on pharmaceutical, products. Is there anything about that you're like, yeah, I'm kind of glad I'm out of that or no?
Yeah, I would say that would be mainly pharmaceuticals, because money is definitely spent in, I would say, almost seductive ways. For example, bringing in a lunch or taking a doctor out to dinner. But that's, you basically have to find time with them so that you can give your pitch and discuss the benefits of your product. I don't miss that at all because that seems wrong. Um, Medical device I really miss because I loved what I did. I had a deep brain stimulator. It's called a DBS. And it's basically an implant in the midbrain for a Parkinson's, essential tremor, and dystonia patient. So it could take away a tremor or rigidity. And my job was to teach the neurologist how to identify the proper patient candidate. And my I would go into surgery, but I actually didn't do that toward the end. The other two girls, we were the only all-female team in the country. The other two gals liked working in the surgical center. I did not, because it was cold and I really couldn't do anything. The surgeon knows what he's doing, and I had all male surgeons. So I would also program the patients and teach neurologists how to program their patients. So that was very fulfilling. I mean, one of the Parkinson's patients painted me a painting because he was able to paint after years of Parkinson's where he had a tremor. So it's really fulfilling. I do miss that. Plus, I love being my own boss.
Yeah. And that's I mean the story you're telling me about that one of my good friends has Parkinson's. So I'm interested in that, but that's very rewarding. I can imagine about like how amazing that you really impacted that person's life. That's huge. Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing. And it still feels good. And I'm still friends with all of my former clients. In fact, sadly, one of the surgeons passed away this weekend, and I told my old teammates, and then another doctor, a young one of my favorite people. So it was Dr. Ron Young is the surgeon, and Dr. Andy Wu, who is just this amazing migraine specialist. We lost them both this weekend,
Oh, wow.
and I know I'm heartbroken. I was able to share that with my teammates, but I would say the moral of the story is that they weren't just my clients, they all became my friends. And I think that's the biggest lesson that I learned in pharmaceutical and medical device sales is that it's not your product. You have to have a really great product. Otherwise, you can't sleep at night. You have to represent something that you believe in. But the key to sales is relationships. And that was something I pride myself on. And I'm doing that now with the buyers of the different retailers.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, first of all, for the loss of your friends. That's sad. And two in one weekend. My gosh,
Thank you.
that's sad. But it does bring to light, like you said, a good point about the relationships. That's what it's all about. And the fact that you're essentially now it's your product, you're the boss, and you're building different relationships that will help you to succeed. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. What would you say? I know you get the feedback, and we talked a little bit about that, but that has to be rewarding too, that you've created a solution that really so many people can access that you're making because someone could say, oh, well, it's a small thing, but it's not really a small thing because life is full of small like joys that help us get through the day and also small aggravations that could, believe me, I gripe enough throughout my day, so I get it. You're helping a lot of people because this is so accessible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It does make me feel good when people will write a testimonial or tell me, "Oh wow, that's genius. That's going to make my life a little bit easier." And that's the key. If I can make someone's life a little bit easier, I'm a happy girl.
Yeah. Well, and I heard before when you were saying it, I'm like, you guys should collaborate, you and Michael and Shira, because your product helps to keep people safe. They're trying to keep people safe, right?
Yep, that's true. Yep.
That's fantastic. What would you say? I know that you're working on it. Is there and you're working on new products? Is that I was going to say what's next, but obviously you have other things in the hopper, so to speak. Do you
Yep.
see this as the rest of your professional life? Do you see yourself continuing to focus on this, on being an entrepreneur?
I do. I love it. It's phenomenal. And my next invention actually also came out of a need. It's because we're currently in Tractor Supply and we're in a terrible area. We're in the bird seed aisle, which seems really odd to me. But I noticed that at the Tractor Supply, they have bags of soil or bales of hay, buckets. So my new invention doesn't help buckets, but um, it's great for soil. Or they sell big bags of dog and cat food and horse feed. Well, guess what? You have to carry those things in your arms. So this is basically a tarp that connects to the click and carry, so you can carry those big heavy bags, a 50-pound bag of dog food, like a briefcase. So you don't have to crook your elbow. So you could easily carry 50-pound on each side for a total of 100 pounds. And it's a lot easier because you're carrying it like a briefcase. So you're not having to lift.
And I can relate to that because I'm a kooky bird person because I love watching my birds at the bird feeder until the squirrels arrive to the party and then I like lose my stuff. But I am one of those people that's carrying now. I try to get, if I don't get, actually, I don't usually bother getting a shopping cart, but I'll get like a 20-pound bag. The 40-pound, I think I get help with, but the 20-pound bag enough is hard enough to maneuver. Or maybe I have tried the 40-pound or even like topsoil. I've tried to like take out topsoil or something for planting. That is not easy to carry. It is not.
I agree. You're going to love this. In fact, I will send you one. You could give me your feedback before I launch it. You could
Ooh,
tell me what you think. You could be my guinea pig.
I love it because I'm out of bird food. I'm on my last cup full.
Perfect.
Yeah, we have an Ace Hardware, so but I'm sure you have a list of places that you're going to get into eventually too.
Right out the gate, I would say it would be Tractor Supply and Lowe's, but it's definitely a necessity. It's going to make life a lot easier.
Yeah, I think that is true. That's fantastic. I mean, I know that I understand based on your profession, the sales side of it, but did you have influences in your life as far as like family or other relatives, teachers, friends who were also innovative or that you kind of got inspired by, or was this because of your own ideas and then seeing what you were seeing?
It was mainly me. In fact, when I went to the University of Scranton, I started in electrical engineering, and there were only about 33 of us, and only three were women. And I had a bad situation with one of my professors. I didn't do well on my first test in physics, and it was just because I didn't know how to study at that time for a physics test. And he made a fool of me for being a woman. And then on the second test, I had the highest grade in the class, and he made fun of me again. And I was so angry. And I remember saying, I'm going to get into sales of engineering equipment to get back at this professor. His name was Dr. Connolly. I can't believe I remember that. I could not stand him.
I hope he's
Um,
retired.
maybe, maybe he'll remember not to make fun of his students. He did teach me a lesson. I mean, I was mortified, so mortified that I studied so hard and ended up with the highest grade in the class. But that really inspired me, and I've always been a creative person. So engineering and designing things was a natural. I didn't end up finishing in engineering, but I do have a math background because of my experience with the engineering.
Mm. That, I'm like, my first thought when you said that is, give me his address. I'm going to pay him a visit. Um, but but that does bring up and I'm so glad to see that things are changing with the encouragement of young women in STEM
Mhm.
and STEAM. But I mean, hearing your story and where we're at right now in society, in many ways, I feel going backwards makes me super angry because you were, first of all, no one should ever be mocked. But first of all, you're mocked because of the low score. And then secondly, you get the high score, which you should be praised for, or at least acknowledged, and it's still the same result.
Mhm.
Have you had I'm sure there's sometimes you can commiserate or at least maybe collaborate with women in a different way than men, but are you still running into some, not someone exactly like doctor, that professor, but similar situations where maybe the trust isn't there, or they don't maybe give you the same credit as a man or something like that?
I would say these days, not as much, but even just being in pharmaceutical sales, I in a way it was a little bit demeaning because the doctors know their work, they know medicine, and I used to tell a joke just as a way to set the stage. So I wanted to let them know that I don't take myself seriously. And it was, what's the difference between a pharmaceutical rep and an attorney? And the difference is that the attorney knows he's lying. So what that says is that a lot of the marketing material for pharmaceuticals and the studies, um, it's easy to manipulate the data. Or let's say, for example, my first drug was an SNRI, it was Effexor XR, which is a serotonin and noradrenaline reuptake inhibitor, norepinephrine. And most people know SSRIs, which are the common ones like Prozac. Basically, the effectiveness was about 20% with the SSRIs and about 30% with the SNRI. And obviously, there was just a 10% difference from 20 to 30, but we used to say it's a third more effective. Well, that's 33%. That wasn't really the case. It was only 10% more effective.
Mm,
So that's pretty shady. So my point is that the doctor is the master of their field of medicine. So obviously, I knew that I wouldn't have the credibility that they have, having earned their medical degree. But I did feel like I was treated a little bit differently as a pharmaceutical rep, because I would say older male doctors would think, oh, yeah, they're going to hire this young girl because they have a better chance of getting in the office than a young guy, which is
yeah.
probably true. So it was promotion. So yes, I did experience it in my early days, but I never did in medical device. People were taking me seriously, which I valued because I thought it was really important to know my stuff. And if I didn't, I would have to leave the industry. And it was very important to me to be a good, viable source for them for any questions they may have.
Yeah. And it's interesting as you were mentioning the pharmaceutical side, I can't help but think of that movie Dope Sick and it's all about the opioid crisis, which we won't go down that path, but I mean you see that side of it where it's, the misleading and it's the promotions and the partying and all that stuff that's really, maybe it was overdone for the movie, but I don't know how much overdone. I think a lot of it was true. But yeah, to your point, what you're saying. But I'm glad to hear that you're having a better experience and that you are being respected and thought of as you should be. So that's I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
am.
And I do think it is changing. I know it's so great to see young women in, recently I was at a couple different events where there's young women in like robotics clubs and they're excited about it and they're leading the pack. And I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. And
Me
I think
too.
it's only going to get better.
I agree. I really do think that things are changing. At least I've noticed that in my life, and I'm really thrilled to say
Yeah.
that.
And I think it's important too that the young women see women like you because it is a role model because it's like, okay, this takes a patent, this takes design, this takes a whole bunch of different skills that you have to flex the marketing, the business, the supply chain, so many things. So when women like you are out there, young women can think, I can do this. I can
Yeah,
overcome this obstacle. Why not me? Why can't I do it? And I think that's fantastic and it's important.
absolutely. Listen to that, girls. Get out there and do it.
Yeah, 100%. So as we start to wrap up here, I would like to give a plug to, well, we mentioned some of the places where Click and Carry is, but do you still sell it online or do they need to go to a retail?
I do. I sell it at clickandcarry.com. It's CLICKANDCARRY.com. I'm on Amazon. I'm on Lowe's.com, um, Walmart.com, and then in all of those stores. So currently it's Tractor Supply Company. I'm in Jules Osco, Acme, Vaughn's Pavilions, Albertsons, Safeway, Meyer. And then I'm going into the Kroger stores, and they have a bunch of different banner names, kind of like Albertson Safeway with Jules Osco. I'm going into Lowe's and I'm going into Walmart.
That's great. But a lot of people do grocery shopping. I know I do. And I'm usually someone who's either pulling out my back or tweaking my shoulder when I'm carrying all my bags. And again, I love the safety aspect as well, too, because
Thank
that's
you.
not something I consider, but you're right. That has been me multiple times, more times than not. There's no hands free. So how could you protect yourself if someone wants to rob you or do whatever? Yeah.
Exactly. And I love it because I could wear my groceries and then carry my water bottles.
Yeah, yep. I can relate to that too, because that's usually my problem. I usually have like maybe a laptop bag, a purse, and then I'm carrying water and something else. So it's not the smartest or the safest, but yeah, I think that is exactly safety, ease, convenience, all those good things to check out and to also be inspired. I think your story is one for sure of inspiration. And also,
Thank
I
you.
would say hearing about your naysayer in college, that's just another reason I love that. It's like, you know what? It's kind of like a middle finger, like, look out, look what I'm going to do. And I love that for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I hope he's not local and hears that, but yeah, he had a big impact in my life, a negative one, but maybe it was negative, but it enabled me to be an inventor. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it turned into a positive, or I should say, you turned it into a positive, which I think is great. Is there
Thank you.
anything else that we just didn't cover about yourself or about this whole journey that you would want to say to the listeners, to women listening or men listening, anyone out there, before we wrap up finally here?
Yes, I would like to say that there's so many resources available to people who are interested in inventing or starting a business, like the SBDC, the SBA, amazing people like Marty Wolf, who is a business coach, colleges and universities. For example, let's say the Anderson School at UCLA, they have to do a coursework for their semester. So you could volunteer and people can do a PR search or a search and devise a plan for your PR or for your marketing or help you with manufacturing just by approaching colleges and universities. Like, for example, I used Audrey, who was at the Pasadena Design School, and she was getting her master's in product design. So I was able to use their 3D CAD printer and pay only $200 versus $2,000 in the normal world. And then there's something wonderful in each state. There are at least two in each state, and it's called Patent and Trademark Resource Center. So PTRC. And it's manned by librarians who are well versed in patents, trademarks, copyrights. They can put you in touch with a local patent attorney. They could help you to search to see if your product's out there, if you have something viable that is not patented, trademarked, or copyrighted, so that you can actually go out there and do that for yourself. So they're available in every state. In fact, I think our closest one is in Philadelphia. And these librarians are absolutely brilliant. They're basically mini patent attorneys who can help you with your process. And it's free. It's provided by the government.
That's phenomenal. And that's a great point too, because I think we sometimes tend to overlook, forget, or we're often not aware. I'll say, speak for myself. A lot of times I'm not aware of all of the resources that are out there. And as to your point, a lot of them are free. And universities, colleges, they are a great resource. I know here we have SBDC at the University of Scranton. I have utilized their services a few times, but also I think I want to say Marywood or Penn State, who's had like some of their students help people do their taxes. So you never know what services are available, but take a look because there are many to be had at a lot of different universities. And I think, it's a matter of paying attention or even just making a call or an email and just saying, visiting the business development center and say, what else have you got? Like, who could help me with this problem, or where could you direct me with this particular thing? I think that's a really key, important point to make. Yeah.
Thank you. And I love our SBDC at the University of Scranton. They're great, manned by brilliant people.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great shout out. So folks in NEPA, be sure. And I know there's one in Wilkes-Barre as well. And I'm sure there are many associated with a lot of different universities. So keep them in mind. Well, I want to thank you so much, Kim. I'm glad we got everything situated today. I'm glad you got your new phone. I know that was stressful, but technology can often be stressful. So we just keep moving. We do our best. But thank you so much for sharing your story, your time, and congratulations on all of your success.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was such a treat.
Thank you so much. I'm going to thank Marty when I see him because it was a great connection. And I'll close the way I started, where I say again, just, and I think Kim made the great point too, the network, the people that she's worked with, but made friends with, the Shark Tank group that they're connected online and help one another. Just, as I like to say, in fact, it was in the intentional marketing class where Marty kind of chuckled at me, but I made the point when they're making all these different points about networking, I said, be a good human. I think that's just kind of one that we can all use. Just be a good human. And what does that mean? It means listening to someone when they're talking, being curious, being interested in what they're all about. You never know what you can learn. And then, of course, you can learn, they can learn from you as well. I think we all have a lot to give one another, is my point, I think. So
I agree. Well said.
thank you. And thank you to my listeners. I know that I'll be excited about 2026. I'll be lining folks up for then, and I'll be celebrating 5 years in May of 2026. So I'm super excited about that. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast, or if you know a woman in your life and you're like, you know what, she's overcome struggles, she does this or that. If you've listened, or if you want to just take a scroll through on Apple or Spotify to see my past episodes to get a sense of who my guests have been, my main thing, you'll see the theme is giving women a platform to share their stories. It could be a business person. It could be someone who's just climbed a mountain. It could be someone who's dealt with mental health in a different way. Whatever it is, please reach out and let me know if it's you or someone in your life. And a key thing is if they want to talk, that would be key. If they're happy and welcome to be a guest, that would be great. But don't be afraid to reach out to me. And if you would like to support conversations like this, because this is important. At least I think a lot of these women I have on, all of these women every week, have something valuable to say. And if you'd like to help support that by being a podcast sponsor, reach out, because that is affordable. As I say, it's more affordable than if you buy a latte outside the home every day. So keep that in mind. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.